In today's episode of HR Visionaries, we talk to Nicole from Guerbet. We talk about the importance of employee engagement and trust between employees and management. Stay tuned. Welcome to HR Visionaries, where we unlock the secrets of modern HR. I'm Benjamin, your host. Join us as we shed light on today's HR universe with HR leaders and innovators from across the globe. Whether you're an HR pro, a business leader, or just curious about the future of work, this is your shortcut to the forefront of HR innovation. Brought to you by Hire, the AI talent attraction platform. Welcome to the latest episode of HR Visionaries. I'm very much looking forward to my guest today. Nicole, it's great to have you on.
Thank you, Benjamin. Happy to be here.
Nicole, can you tell us a bit about yourself? Who are you?
Sure. So Nicole Johnson, I am at Guerbet. I'm the U.S. HR director. Guerbet is a international organization headquartered in France. I myself have been in HR for almost 20 years now, in a variety of different organizations, from tech to nonprofit and pharmaceutical. So kind of all over the scope, but always in HR. The last probably 12 years or so have been in overseeing HR departments and teams.
When you choose a career in HR, what did come to mind?
Man, I'm not sure if anything particular came into mind. I was originally going to go to school after I graduated to get my doctorate in psychology and then open up my own practice. But between undergrad and graduate school, someone contacted me and offered me a job, and the money sounded great. So I just kind of started there and always just enjoyed what I was doing. Took some additional coursework through Cornell and got a certificate from that school for human resources, and then just really started to grow my own career. I think for me, it was really piecing together the business needs with the employee needs to create a really holistic approach to company success that I found rewarding and kind of continued to work through.
Well, it would have been a very different life then, right?
It would have, maybe. Who knows? Who knows?
Indeed, I always find it very fascinating to understand how people entered the world of HR. So you mentioned you have been around for quite some time. How have things changed over the years?
Oh man.
I know it's a very open question.
It is. I mean, I would say, I think the biggest change is obviously the technology kind of capabilities of technology. You don't have to use paper anymore. Everything is really all within a computer system. I think there are some good points and bad points about it. Obviously, it makes work a little bit more efficient, but I think it also takes away from that people aspect and connection that really is needed from a company perspective, in my opinion, to ensure that employees have the right level of development and engagement within that organization.
Well, when it comes to engagement, it's a topic that has been floating around, in particular in last years, quite a bit. What do you think constitutes successful employee engagement for you? And funnily enough, I just a few hours ago saw that email from Gallup about the engagement study. So it's a very hot topic, isn't it?
I think it is, and I think that's because we've seen through all of these studies that the lower level of engagement directly corresponds to the, I guess, longevity of an employee within an organization. And I think there are a lot of obviously, I think also it's the productivity of engaged employees is extremely higher than those that are disengaged. Um, so I think engagement is a hot topic right now, but I think it's always been on the minds of business owners and CEOs and HR people to maybe more so HR people for the long run, but more recently, kind of the CEOs have started to, I guess, buy into maybe what HR people have been communicating for a while is this engagement, and there's multiple levels to engagement. Um, and I think we've seen through studies such as like organizations such as Forbes with the importance of engagement from a direct supervisor management level to that employee is really what aids in a employee's morale and happiness within that organization. Um, just building trust with employees, making sure that they feel heard, making sure that they see and understand their opportunity for growth and development within the organization. Um, I think is I don't even know if you can put a price tag on what that value is to a company and to the employee.
But it would certainly be a very high price tag, I guess.
Yes, yes.
And well, I'm wondering, since you mentioned before you have worked for a non-profit organization. Is engagement in a non-profit organization different than in a for-profit organization? So one might assume it's well, people are in a non-profit more for purpose, and therefore the level of engagement is generally much higher.
I actually don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, it might be easier for an employee to be bought into the cause of an organization, but that doesn't necessarily correlate to engagement levels. Um, I personally believe that the number one driver of engagement is the trust and relationship that an employee has with their manager, um, and with management in general. So if your supervisors and your managers and your leadership is or are fully engaged in the day-to-day operations and day-to-day life of employees, your employees are going to be more engaged because it's everything's visible. And I think that's you're not they don't assume or perceive that there's lies being told or things that you're as a company trying to hide. Um, and I think that's in any company, whether it's for profit, nonprofit, um, whatever type of product you might sell, whether you're a technology business or a pharmaceutical company. Um, I think engagement and how you drive it is as important to any of them, and probably the process will be similar for any of them.
That also leaves then lots of responsibility with line managers.
Yeah, absolutely, it does. And I think it's not just with them, but it's us as HR professionals helping those line managers or other leaders within the organization know their impact throughout the entire company. It's not they're they're as important as anyone else. So are your kind of associates, right? There isn't one person in an organization that is more important than another. And I think helping them to understand how to get the best out of their employees is important, but also helping other leaders to lead them. So leading by example, showing them what to do, helping them through trials and tribulations, is important. So making sure that they don't feel like they've ever been let down by the company or by the people within it.
How do you make sure that you work with managers successfully? So some may be easy to work with, some maybe a bit more difficult to work with, but nevertheless, you have to build up a successful relationship.
I mean, it's all through trust, really. And it sounds simple, and I think at its core it is. I think a lot of times people will label a employee, or we'll just say an individual, no matter where they are within the company, as difficult, right? Um, but I've found that they're typically not. They typically want to do their job as much as anybody else. They want to make sure that it's correct, and it's just speaking to them to understand maybe what the pushback is, or to identify what the roadblocks might be. Um, Sometimes it's internally within the company, sometimes it's externally through their personal life. And I think once you understand what people are going through, and you're able to identify that who that person is as a human being, and build that trust, that there really isn't a difficult person. Um, Everyone wants to be heard, everyone wants to be seen and recognized, and they don't want to be pushed off or labeled as such, right?
What do you think is the most important skill when it comes to establishing a, well, productive relationship?
I think it's listening. Um, it's and not just hearing. I think a lot of times leaders, or employees mistake hearing for listening, right? I can hear what everyone's saying, but do I listen to what they're saying and then act on that, or provide them feedback on what it is they're saying? Do I speak to their issues, or do I speak to what I want to speak to? And so it's that active listening, engaging. Again, we get back to engagement, engaging in that conversation, picking up on things that they're saying, or sometimes things that they're not saying, um, and really helping them through whatever, if it's an issue, or helping them through recognition, or through understanding of a situation, or through growth.
How do you become a good listener?
Not having an agenda, I suppose. I
How can
think
how
I
can you
think
not have an agenda?
I think that there are, when you get to a certain point in your career, obviously you need to move things forward, right? KPIs, uh, metrics, data, whatever that might be. But if you're really trying to have a conversation, you need to be able to put your thoughts to the side when you're engaging in that conversation. Because a lot of people have ideas. A lot of people might have feedback in terms of how a process is currently moving or going. And if you are already thinking about what you're going to say next while someone else is talking, you're really not going to be listening to what they're saying. And you're just going to have queued up your next question or comment, and you're going to completely bypass what they're saying, which is, that's what I mean by kind of not having an agenda. I think we all have things that we want to talk about, or kind of that end goal, but if you're too focused on the little picture, that finding that one particular puzzle piece, you're going to miss what everything is really supposed to look like and how it all comes together.
How do you coach yourself and how do you coach others becoming good listeners?
It's for me, I've helped, the way that I help people is helping them to understand their personal cues in conversations. Um, for the most part, the kind of active listening goes away when you're very passionate about a particular thought, idea. Um, and so I've always kind of coached leaders and executives through, when you start to feel yourself get worked up, you need to either remove yourself from that conversation completely, whether it's just excusing yourself and coming back at a later time, or slow down, take a couple breaths. It may be even having someone else in the room that can understand what you're going through so they can interject and ask kind of different questions that help to direct that person to better think or more clearly think. But it's taking time. It's not being rushed. It's not saying I have 5 minutes to speak to you, and not allowing that conversation to be had. So I think it's slowing down, being purposeful with what you're saying and the words that you're saying, being mindful to how you're feeling and your reaction to other people's comments, and then knowing how your own body works. And so a lot of that is coaching after the fact, right? When you're dealing with executives and they're in a room and it gets heated, it's maybe tapping their foot or just looking at them, and then they start to realize what their cues are before they get to a point where they're not listening anymore and they're just excited or too excited about the topic.
Um, well, in listening, one of course sometimes realizes that well, things are a bit different, and some things may surprise you. What was the most surprising thing you have ever learned from a conversation where you actively listened?
Surprising thing. Hmm. I'm going to say I don't know if anything really surprises me, because I really try not to have a kind of preconceived notion on a conversation. I do try to go into conversations with an opened or clear mind, so to speak, so that I can really get to what people are saying, get to the facts of the information that they're telling me without having my own opinion already created. Um, I think a lot of times, in those conversations, you'll find that no one is acting out of malice. And let's say 95% of the time, people are genuinely trying to do their job, and or at least their perception of what they're being asked to do, correctly. And a lot of times it comes down to understanding and communication. Um, Sometimes I think, especially in today's world, we have a lot of different ways to communicate. We have a ton of different ways to virtually communicate with each other. And when you no longer have the visual aspect of conversation, whether it's reading people or body language, it really does, or even sometimes even tone, and in someone's voice. If you're just chatting on a messaging app, it takes a lot of what's being said and how it's being said away from that conversation. And a lot of that, I think, is important to human behavior and human context. So, and I forget the original question where I was going with that, but
Yeah, I was wondering. So what kind of active
surprises
listening
me.
role you had surprised you the most, indeed? And I think you provided a super interesting answer, and that sorry, I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
So I was wondering, so in particular, as you just mentioned, so with regards to communication via chat, where and through a chat, it's very hard to communicate emotions and to read more than what is actually just written, and therefore, well, people help each other out with emojis. So how has this changed the way we communicate and the way we listen? So when I can just not see or hear you, but just read the plain text you send me.
Yeah, I think I've seen a lot of issues of like perception versus intent, right? So now a lot of people are perceiving things that are outside of the uh, original person's intent for that conversation or that comment. So if it's very short, they're gonna be like, oh, they're mad at me, or I did something wrong, or what they're annoyed, whatever it might be. When it really might, maybe it's just they're they're trying to do too many things at one time. They're having a conversation in person with someone while also responding to you, and they get their comment gets kind of pushed out of their fingers quicker than maybe they had intended. Um, so I think there's a lot of misunderstood comments, or also I think communication has shortened. So when you can be in front of somebody, speaking to them and explaining what it is that you're looking for, and that person can then kind of shoot back questions, or engage in that conversation. When you're just typing, hey, I need you to do this, it's easier to make assumptions of what's being asked. Um, and I think that can lead to the miscommunication issues that organizations have.
When we will look ahead for next several years, how do you think HR will change and the role of HR will change going forward?
Um, I think it's super hard to say, because I feel, especially in these times, technology moves so much quicker than it did at the beginning of my career. Um, and I can't foresee exactly where it will take us, or even what steps forward or what steps back uh, we may take. Um, I think as a department that involves humans, there will always be those aspects of kind of human and human nature that we need to continue to work through and understand, um, that go and kind of coincide with engagement and morale and people development and training, executive coaching and leadership. Um, so I think those will continue to always be there. I think the biggest changes will come kind of on the administration side of HR. Uh, we've seen some of that already kind of take place through AI in, like the recruiting process and the screening process, in generating emails or responses, or kind of large um, communications to organizations, or in creating PowerPoints and things like that. So there's a lot of efficiency that can be built into artificial intelligence. I think there will be some things that get missed out on in engaging in AI because there's such it's a tool that's built to see certain things but not others. And I think that there will be, or I hope that there will be ways to either not fully utilize it or to have the system better understand kind of the intricacies of people and resumes and things that aren't on resumes. So I think I don't know. Overall, I can't really say what the future holds. But I know that us as HR will always be here. And I think what I've seen through my career and kind of the trajectory of HR and people departments is the building relationship between the CEO and human resources. And when you can really partner with a strong HR lead, the company is successful because you're really getting into someone that understands finance and business, but also understands the people part of it, and they can bridge those two together. They want for the success of the company, but they also want for the success of the employees within that company. And that's when people feel valued, and that's when organizations are successful.
Nicole, I have one last question for you. So, as an HR professional who has been around for around 20 years, what are your 3 favorite questions you ask in an interview when you hire people for your organizations or for your team?
Let's see. I like to ask candidates about our company's core values and how they feel they amplify those values in their day-to-day life, or are there any values that they feel they need to work on? I like to ask why an employee, or why a candidate, sorry, is interested in joining our organization. What is it about this particular role that is driving them to us? And then I like to ask them, what is it about them that sets them apart from anyone else that we might be speaking to for this particular role? Yeah, those are my 3 questions. I think that I ask really any type of person or individual for any role that we're looking to bring in.
Lovely. Nicole, thank you so much. Was a great pleasure talking to you, and it was a very, very deep and insightful conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Appreciate your time.
And thanks to you all listening in, and see you next time.